Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing fine. And today we are going to jump into our unit 5, which is mathematical reasoning and aptitude. When you're gearing up to nail that UGC net exam, it's like this big event, right? Happening twice a year where you get to show off what you have learned. Picture it as your favorite season finale, but for studying. And within this exam, you have that thing, right? Unit 5 mathematical aptitude, and most of us fail to solve sometime easy question because we think it's mathematical and it's difficult and we won't be able to solve. But trust me, actually mathematical reasoning and aptitude is quite simple if you have the proper formulas and how and all the concept is clear. Then it's easy to grab all those 5 questions. I'll try to give you a brief introduction about unit 5, and then we'll straight jump into the number series, letter series, and all these things, right? So let's begin. In mathematical aptitude, they ask question from two types of reasoning. One is verbal reasoning and another is non-verbal reasoning, which you don't get question from that, you only get from that verbal reasoning. And let me tell you, this is all about words and language. Imagine you are decoding a secret code written in a letter, or figuring out the right order of that number series. It's like those puzzle word problems in math, but it's cooler because it's about using language to solve. So verbal reasoning is like your brain's workout session with words to see how well you can understand and play with language. When we talk about verbal reasoning, we are looking at how someone can take new information and make sense of it, especially when that information is served in words. So verbal reasoning is like your secret tool for figuring out what people really mean, when they talk about in the words, or for solving problems that are all about language. It's not just about reading, it's about, you should know the term, you should know the concept. It's very important, and it's more like being a language detective, looking for clues in what people say or write to figure out the bigger picture. Take for example, we have relationship puzzle all the time. They twist like that, and our brain messed up, and then we have to figure out what is. It's kind of tough thing, but if you follow a proper formula, or so if you can picture those diagram, then it'll be easy for you to identify the relationship, right? Let me tell you about, in that session they ask about mental ability. Like, imagine you're at a family reunion and you're trying to figure out everyone is related to how, that's like the blood relations test. Or picture yourself decoding a secret message from a friend, like that. A might stand for C, and sometimes what happens, kind of like the coding decoding, sometimes they just make like, brother is like A and all this stuff, right? So each type of question is different brain bender, from figuring out pattern in a series of letters to solve word puzzles that seem like they're written in code, right, most of the time in your exam. Then we have like logical deduction, and this is where you put on your detective hat and dive into the world of logic. You get statements or little bits of information, and your job is to decide what logically follows. It's like reading between the lines, and figuring out what is it. For example, if a student say all cats love fish, and then you're told that Whiskers is a cat, so you logically figure out that Whiskers loves fish. So this part is all about making smart guesses that we'll talk about in our logical reasoning, but here we're gonna focus on general mental ability, like mathematics. And we have also non-verbal communication, but in that they don't ask question right now, so you can just skip it if you want. So this is completely different because it's not about words, it's about figuring things out through pictures, pattern, and shape. Before, like 10 years ago, they were asking question on this non-verbal reasoning, like they'll give you the picture and they ask you what will be the next figure and all this stuff. But these days they don't ask question based on that. So in a nutshell, getting good at reasoning for UGC net is like training your brain to be a super healthy, because it's about sharpening your thinking skills so you can crack any case, like in your exam questions, or that comes whatever comes in your way. So preparing you to be the kind of research scholar, right, or assistant professor who can tackle problem with ease. That's what they want you to do it. So now let me tell you about the types of reasoning. So as we know, we have deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, and abductive reasoning. So we have already discussed about reasoning in our research aptitude, right? Like deductive and inductive, of course, abductive too. So here I'm just going to give you a brief introduction what they are and what kind of question you get in exam. So deductive reasoning, is like, kind of, detective work that you have to solve what is there. Like deductive reasoning is when you start with general statement or rule and use it to figure out something specific. It's like having a big umbrella rule that covers a bunch of situations. So you just have to understand one thing, that it starts from general statement to goes to a specific conclusion. So you have to remember that line, and then your deductive reasoning is done, right? For example, here premise 1 says all birds have feathers, and premise 2 says a sparrow is a bird. So again, you can just conclude it with what a sparrow has feathers, right? So that is your deductive reasoning. Let me tell you about inductive reasoning. Completely different, because here what happens, you begin with a specific observation to general conclusion, and it involves identifying patterns or trends, and also conclusion are probable, not certain. You cannot say that it's certain, but in deductive it's like certain it will be the answer. But here it's completely opposite, right? So let's say, okay, for example, as you can see here, like observation is like the sun has kind of risen every morning so far, and conclusion will be what? The sun will rise tomorrow morning, right? So that is kind of observation, and you got your conclusion. But let me give you another example, then you'll understand clearly. So let me tell you, imagine you have eaten at your school cafeteria 3 times this week, and each time the fries were too salty. So using inductive reasoning, you might conclude the cafeteria always makes their fries salty. So what you did here, you have observed something, right, specific for a few times, and use it to make a general statement about all the fries in the cafeteria. So if you want to explore more about these reasoning, you can just go back and see the logical reasoning session, or you might would want to see research aptitude, where we also discussed about that, right? So let me tell you about abductive reasoning here. So abductive reasoning is a bit like making your best guess. You see some evidence or clues, and then you come up with the most likely explanation, even if you're not 100% sure. It's like being a detective who has to make a quick decision with whatever the information they have. So let me give you one example. Say you come home and see a kind of wet umbrella and pair of muddy boots near your door. So using abductive reasoning, you might guess someone in the house has been out in the rain recently. You don't have all the details like who it was or when they went out, but based on the clues, you come up with likely explanations. Now let me tell you about the syllabus introduction, what kind of things you are going to get in your exam. So first, what we are going to get, like number series. So in number series, we have already solved all kind of puzzle, right? There, how to they order the number and what number will come next. It'll be like addition, subtraction, maybe multiplication, square, or maybe cube kind of question. All these form the ask. Then we have letter series, which is all about kind of there will be a code, and then you have to figure out what will be the next one. So, and I'll tell you one formula, like you have to write all that letters number, and then you'll be able to solve it. We'll talk about in a separate session on especially letter series, and then it will clear and you'll be able to answer easily, right? Because these questions are easy, you can do it in your exam, but the problem is the time. If you don't have the right method, you lose your precious your 1 or 2 minutes, and that could be game changing at the end of your exam. So make sure that you follow those formula that I'll give you, and through that you can easily answer whatever kind of letter series comes on your way. So that is, and then there will be codes, So it will be like, separate letters are coded with different way, and then you have to decode it. All kind of pattern that we'll talk about there. And then we have relationship, as I told you in this session itself, that we are going to get question, at least one question based on blood relation, and it's very important. And there will be like some figures that I'll tell you, that how with a square you can represent it with male, and circle with female, all this stuff that I'll tell you. And through that diagram you'll be easily able to reach the right answer. So there we'll discuss it. It'll have a separate session as well. And then we have like fraction always about like kind of splitting a pizza and making sure everyone gets an equal share. All these kind of fraction we'll talk about. Then time and distance, then we'll how train moves, how they pass each other, right? And about the platform, all these stuff we'll figure out, and we'll have formula to solve all these problems. Then ratio and proportion, right? So we'll figure out how to multiply, how to find the next number like in continuate proportion. So that proportion we're gonna talk about, and ratio of course. And then percentage, where we'll talk about how to calculate how much that shirt on sale will actually cost. All these is things we'll talk about. And we'll also talk about profit and loss, and then we'll have interest and discounting, and at the end we'll talk about average. So remember, these are not that complicated. There will be data interpretation a little bit kind of difficult, but here it's kind of easy. It takes time if you are new, but if you just keep practice, you'll be able to bag all the 5 questions, and it will help you to score more in paper 1. So that is all about syllabus introduction. Remember, in our next session we'll talk about number series. Thank you so much and have a good day. Bye bye.